Right, so it's time for another book review. This time we're looking at Tim Marshall's Prisoners of Geography. This is essentially an hypothesis that geography plays a substantial role in the politics of the world, and how relationships between countries, foreign policy, wars, etc., historically and in modern times have been to some degree dictated by the geography. So mineral deposits and mountain ranges, rivers, borders, things like that, how those things have affected and essentially dictated the policies of governments around the world throughout history and today. Very interesting take on politics, very interesting to read. Of course, he doesn't go as far to say that it's solely geography that dictates how governments act or what policies they roll out, but he implies heavily that it's a substantial factor. So flicking through the chapters, Russia, so you've got Russia's drive to the west, the plains of Russia, and how they try and protect themselves, historically speaking, try and protect themselves by essentially forming a great big ring of the Arctic and the seas, and they're trying to expand and expand and expand until they're surrounded on all fronts by a tiny little stretch of land, so they're practically immune from invasion. China, you've got the expansion of Chinese empires, all that kind of thing. You've got the USA, so again the USA first settlers, how they expanded outwards and how they had a great big flat expanse of land essentially to just completely make themselves a huge powerful nation. What else have we got? Western Europe, so you've got the politics of Western Europe, particularly mainland Europe, and how historically they've been at war with each other because there's no real geographical differences between, or real geographical separations between mainland European countries. So historically they've been going to war. Where this is where the EU came in, and the EU now prevents essentially mainland Europe from going to war with itself, with countries within its own landmass, because the EU brings forth a common market, a common currency, etc., and largely they're all common speaking languages, very Latin-based languages in Europe as well. So the EU has taken everything that makes them common, makes them one, and put all these countries together and pretty much eradicated war in Europe. He does postulate that maybe war in Europe may become a possibility in the distant future with the breakup of Brexit and the EU. Western Europe, Africa, again, it's a massive landmass. However, it's different cultures, different demographics in Africa. Different colonialism has essentially torn Africa apart, particularly when the British and the French came along with their empires and they just started drawing lines on maps, and how that's affected the demographics and the policies of African governments. You've got the Middle East, same sort of deal, colonialism, drawing lines on maps where you haven't taken anything into account, particularly like demographics, religious populations and cultures and things like that, and you've just caused a mess. Trust the French and the American and the British armies and empires to cause a mess. India and Pakistan, this is an interesting one because again it's colonialism that's caused the problem, just drawing a line across the country. Pakistan, how they're so small but they've inherited so many problems from India that they cannot handle because the population doesn't remit it, and how India is massive, but they're always looking at Pakistan as their main thorn in their side. If you will, they're never looking at China, which is just over the other border, because the Himalayas are in the way, and India and China can't go to war too much because the Himalayas are there. That's very interesting to read. And it also says how technological advances may make the Himalayas, sort of irrelevant when it comes to Indian-Chinese conflict. They do every so often go to sea to fight each other, but it's rare. They don't fight each other over borders because there's a natural barrier in the way. What else have we got? Korea and Japan. So you've got Japan, it's just the islands, and North and South Korea. Again, the drawing of lines and separation of a country causing problems here. You've got the Japanese attitude. The Japanese want to be, because of where they're located on the map, they want to be closer to the West, to the Americans, than they do to the Chinese, because it's the Chinese that are sort of the proxy ruling body of North Korea. And it talks about South Korea and how they're always on edge when it comes to North Korea, because if there's a war, a full-fledged war breaks out between North and South Korea, people are going to be flooding out of North Korea into South Korea, and they can't go anywhere. So South Korea is going to have to deal with an influx of refugees while trying to fight a war with North Korea at the same time. It's all fascinating stuff. Latin America's in here as well, down to the Arctic. So go ahead and pick that up. It's very much worth a read. Tim Marshall knows what he's talking about. He knows his stuff. He's an expert in geopolitics. He's travelled to multiple war zones around the world. Pick it up, give it a read. It's fascinating. Thanks for watching. That was Tim Marshall's Prisoners of Geography, and I'll see you in the next one.